And we should definitely always bring that back. The history, we should always learn from history. That's very important. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't talk about it, but the way it's being presented is a little bit different than what we're trying to achieve.
On this week's edition of The Den, I got Alex Entin. He's running for U.S. Congress here in District 1 against Brian Fitzpatrick. And he's coming at you with a very different twist of, it's not even really different, your views are polar opposite of what's going on in mainstream. Would you agree that?
Yes.
So, first of all, thank you, Alex, for being on The Den. I appreciate it. And tell people who you are real fast.
My name's Alex Entin. I've been the longstanding resident of Bucks County for almost 3 decades. Counselor at grad. Have 4 children, one in every school level, from high school, junior high, and elementary, and one too little to be anywhere. And I'm a concerned parent, and that's why I'm here being involved in politics now.
So you were born in the USSR?
Correct. I'm from that little country of Moldova that's bordering Ukraine.
So, and now, I mean, it's just odd timing, right? What's going on? It's kind of, we'll talk about that, but, you know, when you called up and you said, hey, listen, I want to talk to you, you started saying how you're seeing things that you saw growing up. Can we, no, let's scrap that. First of all, tell people why you want to run for Congress, because I don't know why anyone would want to run for Congress, any political position. I just think you're just asking for problems, right? I'm being honest with you. I just don't. So tell people. Tell them what you're going to do.
I appreciate it. Yes. So for me, the big thing is that I started noticing things in 2020 as I was sitting at a dining room table with my kids as they were on Zoom. And I started noticing things that were very reminiscent of what I saw when I lived under a communist regime. And that really got me concerned because it involved and I'll share a story with you. So in 3rd grade under the communist regime in Moldova, I'm sitting in class and the teacher says, if I call out your name, please stand up. So she went ahead and started calling out the kids' names, and that was one of the kids who was called. After she was done, she turns to the rest of the class and says, class, please take a good look at the kids who are standing. They're Jewish. Well, obviously at that age, I didn't know much because the family kept the religion out of the home, so I didn't know much about what was going on. Come home to my mom, I'm like, what is this Jewish thing? She says, don't worry about it, go play with your toys. And so I put it behind me and forgot about it for a few years, only to realize later what actually took place. And now I saw the same things being used in our schools, where instead of using religion, they used race under a disguise of the critical race theory, diversity, equity, inclusion, and social emotional learning, which all of it is cultural Marxist ideology, which basically teaches kids to hate and disrespect one another. And I knew then that I had to get activated and get involved. And so I was very outspoken at the school board meetings. I really got involved in talking about the books that were being put in, and also I walked around, door knocked, made phone calls for conservative candidates to get them on the school board in order to change the board to be more conservative so we can affect change.
I don't know if I'm conservative. I don't know if I'm a leftist. But you don't think that people should talk about race and some of the things that did happen just so history doesn't repeat itself? Or, even you being Jewish, that people shouldn't talk about the Holocaust? One of my best friends is a Jewish person. You don't think people should be having those conversations, or you don't like the way it's being portrayed? I'm just asking because
Sure.
I don't know what I am, honestly. At this point in time, I think I don't like either side. So can you clarify that?
Sure. And we should definitely always bring that back. The history, we should always learn from history. That's very important. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't talk about it, but the way it's being presented is a little bit different than what we're trying to achieve. For example, Martin Luther King always said, I hope that my kids are judged not by the content of by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. But now we're going backwards with this whole critical race theory, because now we're saying, well, if you're not white, you're being oppressed. So nobody even talks about what is it that...
Is that what they're saying with critical race theory? I'm not that up with it. Is that what critical race theory is, hey, listen, if you're not... I can tell you this. My son goes to a private school. I just happened to listen to a Zoom, the teacher, and she was pretty much bashing the police and bashing some other things, which I didn't agree with. And I just told my son, listen, that teacher's full of shit.
Right.
And that's all I can say. I'm not going to go fight the school. Do you really think you're going to have an impact at this point? It seems like the boat's left the dock at this point. I'm being honest with you.
Well, listen, if we don't try, then we're going to turn into another country just like a Venezuela and Cuba, because they had a cultural Marxist revolution there as well. And so I'm fighting because I'm fighting for my kids. I don't want them to grow up in the type of environment that my family and I escaped from.
So you believe that if we keep teaching critical race theory, that we're going to be a Venezuela, we're going to be a Russia, we're going to be one of these other countries? And how would that look if you? I'm just asking.
Sure. Well,
Because it seems far-stretched for a guy like me, but I'm not as close to it as you.
Right. And the thing is that here we live a little too comfortably. Most of us haven't seen what the other side looks like.
I agree.
And, for example, you go walk into a store, you don't have this type of bread, then you buy this type of bread. You come home, you turn on the Netflix, you watch a show, you pick up your phone, you order something from Amazon, you're good. But I've seen the other side, and that's why I'm so concerned. And so it could happen because in every color revolution, the way it happens is first people have to start hating each other, so there's a division. Once you have division, then you can come in and take over. When the country's united, it will never happen.
Do you think people hate? It was funny. I was on an airplane coming back from Chicago last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, and there was a big black guy next to me talking to me, and he started talking to me about politics. I said, "Listen," I said, "I don't give a shit either side. I think they're both. Truthfully, I think they all laugh at us. I do. I'm being honest. I think Republicans and Democrats laugh like we're the hamsters on the wheel, and they're all sitting back at the parties. If COVID didn't teach you that, I don't know what did, right?" And this guy was one of the nicest guys I ever met. Wasn't an ounce of racism. And we both actually said, don't you think it's the politicians on both sides trying to make it a race thing so they just keep getting reelected? I'm not being rude. It's, look out on my floor. It's the fucking United Nations out there. Right. Nobody cares. Nobody talks about race.
Right. It's the uniparty. You're right. It is the uniparty in D.C., and it's the swamp that's creating part of it, what we're seeing today. You're right.
I'm asking. I travel the country, and I don't have any black, Chinese, alien, purple people coming up and saying, you white this, you. Now, people have thought I've grown up privileged because I am white, and I've heard that. Facebook comments, that's a whole nother conversation I care less about. But true racism, I know it exists out there, but I don't believe it's to the level that people are trying to make it.
Right. And because we've been fighting it for so many years with Martin Luther King, the civil rights movement and everything, we've been going in the right direction. But now this whole critical race theory, which originally started in colleges for many, many years now, they realized that they can't just stick to colleges. They have to do more because not everybody goes to college. So now we're seeing it at the grade levels. And for my kids to get a white privilege checklist of why you're privileged, I don't think is appropriate. Nor is the books that they approved, like the one book was called Between the World and Me, which is basically a letter from the author to his teenage son that says that white America will plunder not only the black bodies, but the environment too. That's the premise of the book that was approved at the Council Rock School District.
I mean, I don't know if the people making these choices are doing the best thing for all parties, right? I mean, I've always said this, you come to my house, you'll see every type of child there, and I haven't seen 1 ounce of racism or any type of hostility towards each other, because they don't know better, and the parents don't teach it.
Right.
So you're almost making your own problems if you keep doing these things, no?
Well, by putting that out there to the kids and teaching them that, no, you can't just be friends with just anybody because they're oppressives, they oppress, and they're the oppressed. You're creating that division, which is exactly what you're saying. The kids don't know any better. They come in, they hang out with each other. They don't think, oh, whoa, you know what? I'm oppressing him because I'm white and he's not. Nobody's thinking like that. But when you start pushing that at an early age, because kids are very impressionable.
I know, but do you think kids should be, and I'm not being rude here, right? Mm-hmm. But I tell my sons, listen to your teachers, but take everything with a grain of salt. Your teachers teach because they can't do 90% of them. I'm not being rude. They teach because they can't do, right? Like, what am I going to do? Like, to some people that have a passion about being a teacher, and they love it, right? So I'm not trying to be disrespectful to teachers. Then I'm going to say there's another percentage of them that didn't have any other career choice. They turn right on 95 and they're a school teacher, right? It's going to pay me benefits. I can get my summers off, whatever it may be, right?
Right.
But they're not teaching about entrepreneurship. They're not teaching about business. They're not teaching about checkbooks. They're not teaching about P&Ls. They're not teaching about building businesses. So I tell my sons this all the time. What your teacher says to you, take with a grain of salt. Don't you think the parents should be teaching the core values and not the kids?
I agree with you 100% that the parents should be teaching and not the teachers. I agree. That kind of stuff. The teachers, really what I would love to see is that our schools start teaching civics again to kids, have it as a mandatory class for in all schools. That would be great, so they understand how our form of government works. And everything you said, it actually makes so much sense. Kids come out these days, they can't even balance their checkbooks.
Of course. But my thing is this, though, is, right? So my son, you brought the 2020 election, right? Or whatever it was. My son came home, he said he knew all his kids and his teacher was voting for Biden, right? So I said, your teacher's an idiot. And he's like, well, I'm like, your teacher's an idiot. I said, not that she's voting for Biden, because I don't give a shit who you vote for, truthfully. I could care less. Biden, Trump, Donald Duck, I don't care. The fact that you at 8 years old know who your teacher is voting for shows me what an idiot your teacher is. Because that child should never know who their teacher is voting for.
Right. You're right. And because politics should not be inside the classrooms.
That's my opinion. So, but I taught
agree.
my son that when somebody asks you who you're voting for, and whoever asks you, LJ, from here on out, who you're voting for, say, why does it matter to you? Vote for who you want to vote for.
Right. I agree. I agree 100% with you.
So, critical race theory got you off the couch. What other issues do you see? Because you're not going to win Congress on critical race theory. I know Brian Fitzpatrick. I get along with him. Nice guy. I got nothing bad to say about him. You seem like a nice person. But I don't think people are going to the polls over critical race theory. I could be wrong, but what else is going on out there?
Well, the reason that I was so upset with when I started doing some research is how he's been voting. He's been more of a left progressive voter than a Republican voter. He voted for the Equality Act, which basically allows biological males to go into girls' bathrooms, allows them to go into girls' locker rooms, and it also allows them to compete in girls' sports. And we've already seen the consequences
But
of
vice
it.
versa also, though. The Equality Act's like girls go into men's locker rooms also if they identify as that gender, yes or no?
Correct. Yes.
Right. So it's not just one way, it's both ways.
Right.
And there is conflict on both sides about that. It's a very touchy situation, right?
It is, and we've already seen the consequences of it. We've seen it in Virginia where a boy has sexually assaulted multiple girls in the bathrooms. And we also seen it at UPenn swim team where a boy is beating, who identifies as a girl, and beating girls by 23 seconds as he slows down. And think about it. These are the girls who spend years waking up at 5, 6 in the morning, practicing their sport to be as best as they can be in order to get scholarships, get into good schools. And now they're losing that opportunity because somebody wants to identify as a girl and compete against them.
And I'll agree with you on the girls swimming, right? But the boy using him in Virginia that sexually assaulted a girl, that happens every day throughout the country. Shit happens, right? What made the crime worse was the cover-up. They always said about the Catholic priest. What made the crime worse was the cover-up. They should have just came out and said it and said, this is what happened, right? I mean, what happens when a straight boy in California assaults a girl in the bathroom? I mean...
No, you're right. You're right.
So, I'll buy the Penn wrestler, right? I mean, the Penn swimmer, I'll buy that, right? Like, he crushed every record. But I think the NCAA just came out and said that now in postseason, you cannot, if I'm correct, you cannot compete. If I'm correct. You got to be under a very low hormone level, which is almost impossible for a male to get to, if I'm correct.
Right. I believe I heard something about that as well. But
so they're trying to correct it. Not everything's going to be perfect. And listen, I'm not a left or a rightist. I don't think either extremes are good. I think when I hear people say, hey, I'm a conservative or I'm a leftist, I look at you and say, probably neither side is good because there's somewhere in the middle that we could land and have a great America.
Sure, I agree with you 100%. But at the end of the day, it's that, you put that in place without thinking about the consequences. And that's concerning because now so many things happen because of it since now we're trying to address it.
I agree with you, but first of all, I'm not being rude here, but
Yeah.
What's the skill set for most politicians?
I get it, but
and I'm not sticking up for politicians here. It's most of them were never CEOs. I got over 300 plus employees here. We're growing. I make the wrong decision, everything goes south. I go bankrupt. People get unemployed. A politician makes the wrong decision, they most likely get reelected again next time because they're charismatic and nice.
Well, that's true, except for the fact that, for example, with the infrastructure bill, I myself contacted Brian Fitzpatrick by phone, by email. I never heard anything back from him once. The only thing I heard from him was after he voted for the bill, he sent me a letter giving me the breakdown of the bill. Okay, well, great. I think I can read what's inside the bill myself. Thanks for sending me that letter. It doesn't really, you're not really answering to your constituents and the people who voted you in. So if you want to know how you should be voting, maybe you should listen to the people who voted you in to make the decision how you should vote on a certain bill, if they're not sure which way to go.
How many terms has Fitzpatrick won?
I believe 2 in this district.
And this will be his 3rd.
Correct.
And do you believe the people support Brian Fitzpatrick?
They do not. I've spoken to many, even when I was door knocking for school board candidates last year. I heard a lot of people complaining about Brian Fitzpatrick, and now it's even more so. And people know that no matter what he does, no matter how much money he spends, no matter if he sends them T-shirts, hats, you name it, they're not voting for him. There's no amount of money he can spend on those voters to buy their vote.
Well, I guess my question for you is, are you the only Republican Party running for Congress?
I am not.
Who else is?
There's 3 other people. There's Brad Lanning, Dasha Pruitt, and Carolyn Avery.
So you guys are all going to beat each other up against one person?
I guess we'll see once we first get on the ballot, because that's right now is a petition period, so we all have to collect our 1,000 votes, 1,000 signatures, I should say, in order to get on the ballot for the primary election.
And I guess, we talked about Brian Fitzpatrick, which I have no dog in the fight. He's always been a good guy to me. I don't follow his policy. No offense, I won't follow your policy if you win. I'm not going to follow anyone's policy. I just move forward, and
I got it.
I got to play by the rules in front of me. It's that simple. The same thing I say to my children. Talk about your candidates you're running against. Why are you more qualified?
I'm the only candidate who's been involved in our community. I've been the only candidate who door knocked for candidates, made phone calls, been involved, and I have kids in the community. Other people, one of them doesn't even live in our area.
Who have you worked with? Who you tried to get elected, and for what?
The school board candidate. So Michael Roosevelt was the school board candidate who ran. There was Kevin Gessner. There was
great guy, great family. Gessner's great people.
Oh yeah,
Counts Rock Rats.
Correct.
Very good family.
Yep.
Very good people.
Very good.
If you
people.
see him, tell him I said I haven't talked to him in a while since high school.
Absolutely.
But his brother's a great guy too.
Yeah, no, they're great people. I agree.
Who else?
So there was Kristen Marcel and Bob Hickey. All 4 were running, and we were able to get all but Kevin Gessner onto the school board.
So is the school board Republican or Democrat now?
It's more Republican now, a stronger Republican.
So people got to be happy with that, then I'm assuming, for your side.
Correct.
The left's probably not happy with that.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And how does that impact what goes on the scoreboard level? If you don't mind me asking.
Sure. Well, now I have a little bit more confidence in that they will do a little more due diligence as they're approving books, as they're putting in policies, in making sure.
What's your take on the mask policy?
It should be mask choice. If a parent wants to have their kids wear a mask, great. But that should not be forced.
Do you think that mask stops anything?
Personally, no, I don't think it does. Unless you're wearing an N95 mask.
I'm going to agree with you on this. It's the dumbest fucking thing I ever heard. I'm going to take my mask off, eat, touch this, touch my nose, go touch this, go throw a football back and forth with each other, go to gym class, go switch books, hand our phones to each other, but wear a mask. It's like, honestly, I saw a meme saying if you thought the mask was going to help you, get underneath this cardboard box when the nukes comes. I don't know if nukes come. I don't know if you saw that. Like,
yes,
I was
did.
like, that is honestly and I'm not saying COVID wasn't real. I'm just saying the stupidity of it once we knew the mask didn't work just ended.
Right.
I mean,
Especially
still on a
for
flight,
kids.
you got to wear a mask. My son's still wearing a mask in school today.
Wow.
It's insane.
That is.
It's a joke. It's a complete joke.
I agree with you 100%, and especially for kids too. That demographic of them, God forbid, getting sick and God forbid getting severely sick is almost improbable.
Go watch a Sixers game. But in school, but they want to sell more admissions to their school, and that's what it is. That is politics.
It is, and it's unfortunately that using kids as political pawns.
Well, I feel bad for the head of school because he has no choice, right? He has a job. He doesn't own the business, right? He has donors he has to
Answer to.
He has a board he has to answer to, right? If he doesn't play the game, and he has to go overboard, right? Because a guy like me, I'm not pulling my son out of school. It's been 2 fucking years he's been wearing a mask. I'm like, just wear the mask, LJ. Craig, just wear the mask. It doesn't matter. It's stupid, yes. Is it political? Yes. If a teacher asks you, is it political? You have the right to say to him, yes, it's political. At this point, it's political. If you didn't watch the Super Bowl, if you didn't watch the Sixers, if you haven't seen everything's back open, running normal, but you're wearing a mask in school, come on.
Yeah, I agree. You're 100% on point. I cannot disagree with you anything you're saying.
So, I mean, that's where, and I'm not saying COVID wasn't real. I want you to know that because it was real.
It was.
So, you're the best candidate for the job. What would you change here in Bucks County? Because you got a big area. You got all Bucks County, a little bit of Montgomery County. What would you change?
Well, the position really covers more of a federal level. So it really would change more of the country. But I think people want to have a voice in Congress. People are tired of contacting Brian and saying, hey, listen, this is concerning. We want you to vote like this. And he still does whatever he decides on doing. And I think people are tired of it. That's what they want. They just want a voice in Congress. And they want somebody who's not going to sell them out to lobbyists and special interest groups in D.C. And that's why I'm the only candidate who also made a pledge that I will not accept a single penny from lobbyists and special interest groups in D.C. My only donations will come from my constituents because they're the only people I would be answering to.
That'll change, or you won't have a chest to...
Then that's okay. You know what? There's a lot of things that are going on, and that's the issue, that we allow all of it to continue. And the moment we stop and...
I know, but why would you set yourself up for failure when the rules are in place? I mean, that's like saying you're going to go play football and you're going to chop a fucking leg off and go run with one leg down the field.
Because at the end of the day, then I'm no better than Brian Fitzpatrick and become part of the swamp that's in D.C. Because we need to put an end to it, and people are waking up.
I'm not going to sit there and say Brian Fitzpatrick's part of the swamp because I don't know. I don't think that's fair to... listen,
right, I get it.
I don't think that's fair just to fire... I mean, the guy is part of this community. I know he's done some good for some people, right?
Sure,
so
he has.
Just to throw a missile across the bow, right? Let's kind of...
I got it.
I mean, right, if you give me a specific that you think's a missile, like the equality rule vote and those type of things, I'm all about it. But, you know, when I look at someone, I say, you know, because for me, I feel like politicians going like you right now. You want to be part of the change. But it's almost kind of like when you get in there.
You get manipulated and all of a sudden you become part of the system.
Not even manipulated. How do you move the system? You know, I was at the vice president of AT&T. I'll never forget this guy, Danny Deal, and Charles Stubbs were above me. I was flipping out about how we couldn't change as fast as other companies. And they said, guys, he said, Lance, imagine the Titanic. Do you think all those people wanted to die on that boat? Do you believe all those people wanted to die in that boat?
No, of course not.
They couldn't shift. They weren't nimble enough. You couldn't. Once the system's built, things have to talk to each other. All the systems. There's so much to change. It's an uphill battle. I'm not saying you can't do it. I hope you do, because I'm the believer that the system has to change. I believe that with all my heart. I just don't know, are we going to meet the leader that has the guts and the nuts, girl or man, to say, I'm not going to fall for this anymore, and I'm going to make change here.
And that's what's important, because, you know, they all say, oh, the red wave will probably come in November. And that's great, all good and great. But if we get the same people from the Republican side, like the Paul Ryans and the Mitch McConnells, then nothing will change again. And so it's so important to get the right people.
I agree with
so
you.
Can,
I don't disagree on that.
So you can get something in the right direction. And there are people who've been fighting, but they, you know, in Congress, such as the Matt Gaetzes, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the Paul Gosar. I mean, a lot of people have been involved. But the thing is that there's not enough of them. And if they have people who can actually be there to support them and what they're doing to actually affect change, then we can actually move the needle forward.
I can tell you this. You see him like a nice person. You see him like a nice guy. I wish you nothing but the best. I do, from the bottom of my heart. If I was you, I'd go enjoy my 4 kids, say fuck being a politician, and go live life. Because I don't see much changing unless we get someone. You know, I say this about Trump, like him or not, he did want change. He wanted to try. And people will be like, oh, this or that, you're a Trump guy. I'm not a Trump guy. I've had offers to meet Donald Trump. I've had offers to dinner with Donald Trump. I haven't taken them. Same things with Obama. Didn't take them. I went with Biden. I run into him at an event. I see him, great. I donate to both sides. I don't pick a side. If I met someone that I truly thought would make the change, I'd back them. You know, Peruto I thought would truly make change. So that's why I was a Chuck Peruto fan down in Philadelphia. I believed he'd be fair. I think it's harder than people think to make change.
Oh, absolutely. 100% agree with you. It's not an easy job. And believe me, I would rather sit home. I'm a big family man, so I'd rather sit home with my kids, hang out with them on weekends. But I can't sit idly by because I see what's happening, and I'm so concerned because the freedoms that we have here could just go away. And if we don't really stand up and point out of what's going on, then if we all just sit on the couch and just watch our Netflix, one day, the Ronald Reagan line that if we don't have that freedom, we have to pass it on and fight for it.
Oh, I agree with that
generation.
100%. Here's a question for you, being that you brought it up, right? What do you think about Russia just going into Ukraine? I mean, they walked in I know there's a little skirmish going on, but, I mean, people are saying it's a war. It is a war. People are dying, but it isn't like the Vietnam War. I mean, let's be realistic here. This is a skirmish. Sooner or later, Russia will take over Ukraine. I mean, that will happen. I mean, it's inevitable, right? It's just they're going in.
Right. Well, they had
what do you
talks
think of
about a ceasefire, and there's certain things that Russia wants from Ukraine in order to be able to stop the fighting, but they haven't really officially found a middle ground that they all agreed on. But listen, regardless, that should have never happened. I don't think.
Do you think America should have tried to stop it?
Honestly, no. I'm so tired of seeing our best and brightest sent out to foreign wars. We've seen what happened with the Afghanistan debacle. It's as much as that is part of my country where I was born, by Moldova. I don't think we should send our troops to fight that war. I really don't.
Do you think Putin goes in if our troops were sitting there?
If we were there before he invaded, that's a different story. But the thing is this: it's just like when you put somebody, like when we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. If Russia decided to put somebody, be having a good relationship with all of a sudden Canada or Mexico and start bringing arms there and everything, we would have a big issue with it. Well, so is Russia now having big issues when we keep telling Ukraine, oh yeah, you're going to join the NATO, you're going to join the European Union. The European Union and NATO really started making Ukraine think that they got their back covered. So when Russia said, listen, can we just keep this neutral, don't do anything? They said, no, we don't need you. We have NATO and Ukraine, and we have NATO and European Union. So when Russia invaded, Ukraine turned to everybody. It's like, hey, where are you guys? And there was nobody behind them. And so that's the problem, that we have things going on that people don't really see, and it's affecting everything. Now, if Ukraine stayed neutral, right now there wouldn't. I personally think there wouldn't be a war. There wouldn't be any invasion because Russia wouldn't feel like somebody's encroaching on their borders. And so, but there's so much more involved. That land area has been. You go through all the world wars. When Nazi Germany was coming through, they killed 7 million people going through that area. Then when Russia was going the other way, they killed 8 million people. That area is just bloodshed for years and years. And so it's very discouraging. It's very disappointing because the real people who are really suffering are the regular citizens of Ukraine. And we see the videos, we see the pictures, and it's heartbreaking. But I just don't see how U.S. should send our best and brightest out there.
Well, on the final roar here, because this is a marketing show and a business show, tell people how the economy, what's going on? Inflation's through the roof. Nobody wants to work, it seems like. What would you do to help fix this? I'm kind of curious. What would you do to help? What do you think? Tell me what you think the issues are and how would you start fixing it?
Well, I think we actually are in the position of stagflation right now, where we have an inflation and recession at the same time, which hasn't happened in over 40 years. The way to really fix it all is, one, we have to bring manufacturing back to the United States because it will create great jobs, great paying jobs. It will also start us decoupling from China so that we don't rely on them or give them our information, all the proprietary information in order to do business there. Also, we need to go back to being energy independent and energy dominant. And that way we don't have to rely on anybody in order to actually get our energy, which will help there. And everything else will start falling into place. But, Trump, whether you hate him or love him, that's not important. His policies really created an opportunity for many people. Our best years were in 2019. We had one of the best years where everybody was doing fairly well.
Here's a question for you. COVID hit, right? Do you think America, because it seems like we forget how short on supplies we were. China, we were relying on to give us stuff. Do you think that's a problem?
Absolutely, it's a problem, and that's part of the issue of with our economy, the supply chain issues. But if we bring all the manufacturing back to the United States, that will really fix the supply chain issues and us relying on other countries for things like the PPE and so forth.
Well, Alex, I do wish you good luck. You know, you have no easy task ahead of you, whether you win or lose. Campaigning's tough, but I wish you the best, and thank you for being on the den, my friend.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on, Lance. I appreciate it.